I let it sit and dry for 2 nights, and it got pretty crunchy. It's pretty well dry. So what I'm going to do now is take a little bit of water in a spray bottle and kind of reconstitute some of the paste that was on there, and then just wet it down for this next layer of paper and paste. So just do that all the way around it. And the paste that I'm using is 2 parts water and 1 part flour, and then I also add in like a couple of tablespoons of Elmer's glue to my paper mache paste. So yeah, it's just really simple, just old school. Water, flour, and a little bit of Elmer's glue. So yeah, just let that sit for just a couple of seconds there, and then I'll start putting on the second layer onto my permanent display. We'll call it that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. This paste here is really thin. I made a really thin paste here for this one. Okay, so here's a story from my childhood again. I was kind of talking while I was working on that first part, but the rock tumbler in the garage was so loud it kind of drowned out my voice, so I'm gonna tell you a story. A couple actually related to the paper mache, because when we were kids, our dad had us doing all kinds of, civic events and stuff like that, parades and festivals and all that kind of stuff. And I think he even campaigned for Debbie Stabenow back when she was running locally and stuff. And he'd have us working on all kinds of stuff like that. And of course, Riverfest, which had started out originally to be a local band type of a thing, for just local bands to come and play. And then the city kind of adapted it and turned it into what people have come to know as common ground, where they've charged ridiculous amounts of money for people to come and play along the Grand River. But years ago, it used to be free, and it was for locals, and my dad organized it. He would get one of the local amusement parks. I don't know if they were local, actually. I think there was Elliott Amusements or something like that to come and set up a carnival. And there would be parades, and there would be different stages all along the Grand River for the different bands to play. And my brother used to play a lot of those stages. And back in the day, I saw bands like Froggy and the Beef Tones playing at the Sun Bowl and some of the other venues and stages my dad would set up. But one of the things and one of the focal points of the whole thing was around the Grand River. The awesome Grand River that flows right through Lansing. And I spent a lot of time on that river as a kid. My brother and I used to go fishing, and we actually even ate the fish out of it, which is pretty amazing. But when we were kids, it was fun. Head down to the river, catch us some fish, take them home, skin them, clean them up, cook them up, boom, dinner. And it's probably what has helped with our natural built immune systems too. So anyway, speaking of the Grand River, they used to do these boat races, and I believe it was the local JCs that would sponsor this event, where people could build their own rafts and then race down the Grand River. Kind of like go-kart, boxcar racing, but on the water. But anyway, there were a couple years there when my mom put together some pretty cool rafts to float down. And one of them, one year, they did a giant playpen. They did a giant baby playpen, and they floated that sucker down the Grand River, and they all wore adult baby costumes, and it was kind of funny. It was goofy. Yeah. Seeing my mother in an adult baby costume was kind of entertaining and disturbing at the same time, but anyway. There were a couple of mayors even that had kind of participated in some of these events. But there was one year also where they put together a paper mache, alpine lodge, a Swiss lodge type of a thing. And it was supposed to be for the Alpine Bar and Lounge, which was one of the bars that my dad used to play in. I mean, he pretty much played in every bar in Michigan, I'm pretty sure. And a few across the country, too. I mean, he had a band called King Louie and his Courts back in the 60s, and they actually made the Billboard charts. They made the top 100, which was kind of cool. And my dad had a couple of records that he made, too, with a band called Collection and a couple of other different bands where they actually recorded some songs on records. So it was kind of cool as a kid in elementary school for show and tell. I would be bringing in my dad's records and playing my dad's records. But anyway, I'm getting off track again. Back to the paper mache story, which is the Alpine Lodge. this Swiss mountain thing. My mother and you know, I think I helped. I'm not sure, it was so long ago. I'm pretty sure that I kind of helped with it a little bit, but I don't really remember. All I remember is just being in awe and how awesome it was to see this like big Swiss mountain that they had made with this paper mache. And they actually floated it down the river. They wore like these Swiss outfits. And like, I believe even there was the yodeler guy at the time. I'm not sure if he floated down there or not. McKenna, I think his name was, or something. Lou McKenna. He was like a local yodeler. And yeah, they floated that sucker right down the river. I believe they won a couple of years too. But there was a lot of other little projects and stuff that, you know, my dad, my mom had us involved in, what involved us, you know, making displays and different things like that. And the paper mache Swiss mountain was probably one of the most impressive, and it was huge. I mean, it was like, you know, it was a pretty tall display made out of paper mache and stuff. But yeah, it's doing stuff like that, or this right here, just kind of reminds me of those days back then when my dad would have us doing all kinds of civics events and things and parades, getting involved in all kinds of things going on in Lansing and the Tri-County areas. And, you know, we had a family catering business. They had a restaurant for a short while out there in Charlotte called Shermo's when I was younger. And that kind of turned into a catering business. So I grew up kind of in the kitchen right alongside Ma, cooking food for hundreds of people almost every weekend. Then I did a cake business for a while as a teenager. Actually did pretty well, making pretty good, decent money. Making wedding cakes and stuff on the weekends and the summers as a teenager was kind of cool. But among other projects, my dad used to make stages. He used to build stages and stuff, wood stages too, which is where I learned a little bit about some of the carpentry and stuff that I know now, because I used to help him, you know, watch him put them together and stuff. And my mom also was very handy with wood. My mother would use reclaimed wood, like pallets, and she built like this wooden plate, like this wooden wonderland in her side yard for the grandkids, for all of our kids. And it was pretty awesome. I think they even had a pond back in there for a short time that the local cats would come and fish off. But yeah, working on little crafts and things like that just kind of take me back to my childhood when, you know, I did a lot of these kind of things like this, projects and different things. But, you know, one thing I don't remember as a kid, though, is the freaking backache. That's me. few more layers on here. Getting a little bit low on the paste, but do a few more layers on this. Bet yet, and then I'll start putting a few dry ones on it, and then let it sit and dry once again for another day or two, maybe. So make sure it gets good and dry before I put on another layer yet. But it's definitely gonna take a couple more layers, I'm sure. Pretty much out of paste. There's not a whole lot left in there, and it's getting too thick anyway, so now I'm just going to kind of stick a bunch of these papers on here. Muffin it down just a little bit, and then I'll put like a dry layer on it. I think I'll let this dry for a couple nights again now, a couple days, and then there'll be another layer these shorty pieces left here. I have to cut more for sure.